Thank you. Stand for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the order, please.
Mr. Benton?
Here.
Mrs. Brewer? Here. Mrs. Davis?
Here.
Mrs. Thomas?
Here.
Mr. Swager?
Here. Any announcements, visitors? Mike, did anyone sign in back here? Just for in case.
Records.
Okay.
For record.
Yep. All right, we'll continue on to the treasurer's report.
You should have 3 sets of minutes. You've got the February 3rd special meeting, the February 8th regular session, and the February 22nd work session. You should all receive the February treasurer's report. There are updated appropriations and estimated resources. We have 1 donation this month for the elementary school for teacher support and supplies. And then you have the settlement agreement with Johnstown-Monroe Retail Investments, LLC, regarding the Board of Revision property tax valuation.
Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Discussion? Any questions, concerns, any of those items?
I want to thank Alliance Data Systems for the donation for cleaning supplies to the elementary.
Certainly. Everybody got the tax valuation
Mm-hmm.
issue? Everyone's aware of that? Okay. Any other questions, concerns? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes. Motion carries. Mr. Dixon.
Yes, this evening, I just have a couple of items to discuss with you. First of all, I've invited Derek Busenberg to come forward and give an update relative to some possible action we'll need in April with regard to graduation and the seals that might need your approval. So, Derek, would you please come forward?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
It is, yeah. Yep, it's on. First of all, thank you very much for allowing me to present to you tonight. I will do my best to keep it brief, but give you all the information I think you need. It's kind of deja vu. I think I've given about 4 or 5 of these graduation update presentations over the last 6 years because we've been through lots of iterations and changes to the graduation standards at the state level. And what I'd like to do is just briefly give you an overview of the requirements that are in effect for the classes of 21 and 22. So that's this year's seniors and juniors. And then I'd like to take a look at the graduation requirements for the class of 23 and beyond. They have referred to them as the permanent graduation standards, which I find somewhat ironic and also hard to believe, but it would be nice if we had a consistent set of standards. I think the seniors last year had about 8 different options to choose from, which is good from flexibility, but difficult from a tracking standpoint. So if you I gave you 2 handouts. If you'll look at the one that's blue at the top, it has the blue ribbon that says Ohio high school graduation requirements for the class of 21 and 22. And a lot of what, I'll just go over this very briefly. This should sound familiar. This has in some form or fashion has been around for a few years now. And you'll see the first section says cover the basics, and that's essentially take the classes. The state of Ohio has a minimum of 20 credits. At Johnstown, we have 21 credits, so we require 1 more than the state minimum. And so students have to take those classes listed. And then the second area is show you are ready. And there are 3 options. And the first is what should sound familiar, which is 18 points on the 7 end of course exams. There's a score of 1 through 5 on each exam. And students have to have a minimum of 4 in English language arts, a minimum of 4 in math, and a minimum of 6 in science and social studies. So you can't get a 1 and a 1 in English and graduate. You would need to get a 3 and a 1 or a 2 and a 2, and you can't do the minimum in all areas. So if you get a 2 and a 2 in ELA, you can't get a minimum of 4, 4, and 6. That's not enough points. It's only 14 and you need 18. So you can struggle at ELA, but you need to excel at math or science and social studies. If you do not earn the 18 points, your other 2 options are essentially to go to CTEC. That is the career readiness. You need 12 points in a career pathway, which is really challenging to get outside of CTEC, in a passing score on the work keys test. Or you need to get a remediation-free score on the ACT or SAT, which I think is a 18 in English, a 22 in reading, and a 22 in math. That's the remediation score. So that's what's in effect for the classes of 21 and 22. Since then, the state has kind of phased out geometry, but they're waiting on federal waivers. It's kind of in limbo, and the ELA 1 test has been eliminated. So if you flip to the second page, I'll have you hold on, because what you're going to see on the second page of the blue is actually the class of 2023 and beyond standards that are more clearly explained on the green, the handout with the green. And so if you're in the class of 2021 or 2022, you can use the standards that you came in with, or you can use the 2023 and beyond if you'd like. You have more options available to you. So that's 21 and 22. The handout, yes.
Quick question.
Yes.
Sorry. For our additional credit that we require, is that in the elective category, or is
Yeah,
that for another course?
Career search. It's a half a unit of career search, and actually our community service requirement is another half a credit. So that's where that comes in.
Thank you.
Yep, good question. Any other questions about 21, 22? Okay, so we're plugging along with those. Our kids we know that. We've been working with that. What I'd like to turn your attention to is the handout with the blue ribbon at the top, or the green ribbon, excuse me. Green ribbon that says class of 2023 and beyond. The first section is going to look really familiar, and it says first, cover the basics. Again, that's the coursework. Students have to pass a certain number of courses in each area. The second area is to show competency. And this is where things have changed quite a bit. So we're no longer talking the 18 points. We are talking to show competency or a passing score on Algebra 1 and ELA 2. So students still have to take the biology and the American government and the American history test, but they do not, those count for other things, not directly towards graduation like this. So it's just Algebra 1 and ELA 2. Passing, passing is a 684, not a 700. So proficient 700, passing 684. So students do that. If they don't get that score and they retake it after some remediation, they have 3 other options. One is essentially to go to CTEC. The second is to enlist in the military, or the third is to complete college CCP coursework in those areas. So it's hard to imagine a situation where a student wouldn't earn a passing score in English, but would earn acceptance into a college credit plus program and then earn credit in college credit in high school. But presumably it's possible. So that's how you show competency. One of the things, a couple of the issues we have there are the CTEC option. We won't get the ELA 2 scores. That's a sophomore class. Well, students right now have already applied to CTEC. They won't take that ELA 2 test until the spring, until April. They won't get those results back until the summer. So by the time they realize they haven't passed that test, the window to CTEC is 4 months behind them. The other issue is that sometimes not all of our students get accepted into CTEC, right? And sometimes it's our most at-risk students who might be apt to not pass these tests are also students who will struggle to get into CTEC. So some of the things we're working through, but we'll work through those. The third phase is the reason I'm here tonight, which if you flip the page, so they have to take the coursework, they have to show competency, and then the third section, which is brand new to us, is they have to show readiness. And if you look at your sheet, there are 12 graduation seals. And if you look at the first 9, so that would be Ohio Means Jobs Readiness seal through the technology seal, those are all referred to as state-defined seals. The state sets the criteria for those 9 graduation seals. The last 3, and you see in parentheses, they all say local. So the community service seal, the fine and performing arts seal, and the student engagement seal, those are all locally defined by each board, by each school district, approved by the board, and really have a great deal of latitude to meet the unique needs, desires of each individual district. So where that's important is students have to earn 2 seals, and only one of them has to be a state seal. So you cannot, if the only 2 seals you earn are 2 local seals, that doesn't cut it. If you earned two state seals and no local, you'd be okay. But a minimum of one of the 2 needed for graduation has to be a state seal. So there's 58 pages and 2 or 3 pages allocated to each one of these seals. The industry recognized credential, the college ready seal, the military enlistment. It looks like a great deal of flexibility, but there's actually quite a bit of redundancy. Meaning if you can score remediation free on the ACT, you're going to graduate because you've satisfied the graduation seals and things like that. So we don't see the seals being a huge issue. The competency thing is what's going to hang us up more, is getting everyone to a passing score or to CTEC or in the military or the College Credit Plus coursework. But what we need to do is define community service, fine and performing arts, and student engagement. So what I have here is kind of my proposal. It's a starting point for what we might think about. I think it's a good starting point. You may look at it and say, no, we want more, or we think this is too hard. We can have that conversation. The reason we want to get these approved, one, because the class of 23, they're sophomores. We have one senior who moved out of state at the beginning of the senior year, so hasn't taken any of the tests. We think we have a route to graduation. If we had these in place, the class of 2023 standards for the student would be easier. It would be more of a sure thing, but it is tough. It's kind of hard to believe, but a student who moves in from out of state, who may not take the same required coursework, who obviously isn't going to take Ohio tests when they live somewhere else, in a senior year has to get all that figured out. So 2023 would give us a little bit more flexibility, but we have other options. But so I'll
That's true.
Oh, that's a teaching moment.
That's true.
Wouldn't have had your attention. So if you look at this, the proposed standards, the first one's the community service seal. I think it makes a lot of sense. We already have a community service requirement in this district, which is 60 hours of community service over 4 years with a reflection paper. I think it makes a lot of sense to just keep that standard the same. And by default, in doing that, we would know that every single one of our graduating seniors would have that local seal. And at that point, they really just need one state seal to satisfy the seal component of 2023 and beyond. Questions about that, the community service? I think that's probably the easiest one to start with because we already have, I think, a good plan in place for that. The interesting thing is, because you can't use 2 locals to graduate, the fine and performing arts and the student engagement seals matter because you get a sticker on your diploma, and it can be an incentive for some students, but in all practical purposes, for the sake of graduating, they become less significant, if that makes sense. So they still might be significant to the student. I hope that they are, but they lose significance as far as graduation stands. So for the Fine and Performing Arts seal, again, there are no guidelines. There's no starting point. There are no examples at the state level. I have just looked at some other schools and what they're proposing. But my proposal was to earn 4 Fine and Performing Arts credits. That would be 8 semester classes. So while enrolled in grades 9 through 12. Some might think that's a little high. If you did 4 years of band all year, every year, that would be it. If you did 2 years of band, both semesters, 2 years of choir, that would be 8. If you did a year of art, a year of choir, and 2 years of band, that would be it. The second would be to earn a varsity band letter. And a varsity band letter means that not only have you been in band for 2 years, you have done it for 2 full years in all the performances and things like that. Mr. Zerilli has very spelled out, detailed guidelines for what earns a varsity band letter. In my opinion, if you can stick with something and do those festivals and do the what are the things in the spring called, the big concerts, the contests, thank you. If you can do all that stuff, I think that's worth a performing arts seal. Or participate in 2 high school musicals as part of the cast or the stage crew. Because those are big events and engage lots of students. The thought there is we need something that's very concrete, very subjective, and easy to track, right? We can get a list of the cast and crew, and we know that when they've participated in 2, they meet that. So that's kind of my starting point. If you guys have feedback, if you think that's too rigorous or not rigorous, I'm open to feedback. And does anyone have questions about that?
Do not.
Okay. The final.
I have a question on community service seal.
Yes.
If we could go back a minute.
Yep.
Let's say I do 30 hours of community service in some category. Can I take the other 30 hours in something else?
Of course.
It's very diverse.
Yes.
Do we have a list of things that qualify for that? Every year I hear, I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know what community service I wanted to do. Do we have a better way to get these kids into some creative thinking?
Well, I would say this. I would look at it from a different standpoint.
Okay.
In the 6 years that I've been here, we've never not had a student complete their community service requirement. So we've never had, not one single time. Now, it may have gotten down to the end and it's been a push, but we've never had a student not graduate because of community service. So we might have a better way to do it, but I do think our track record's pretty good. I'm not sure that there's a major problem there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just thinking of the last consideration we had, like, should we not have community service in as much as we had COVID? There's not
Yeah.
enough. But I did hear a suggestion too about the sidewalk between Route 37 and the elementary school that we don't plow or we don't take care of. But gosh, that would be a great service if somebody wanted to shovel that too. So many would want to shovel it.
Yeah, you guys actually kind of broadened my creativity with it, because in the last few years, we've really tried to rein that community service into more credible community service. And I don't want to say more authentic or valuable, but more credible, because who are we going to have sign off if you go shovel someone's driveway, or you take their trash to the curb, or you mow does mowing your grandma's yard count? Does mowing your own yard count? Does mowing your, those sorts of things. We've really tried to narrow it to, like, you're volunteering at the food shelter and there's an authorized person there to sign off on it. But when I got the feedback from the board of like all of these things, I said, man, maybe we have taken too restrictive of a view on this, and we need to be, it lends itself to maybe more cheating or more, less credibility when someone says, well, my 60 hours are shoveling driveways, shoveling sidewalks. Well, who's signing off on that? Who's saying you did do 60 hours?
Right.
But so that feedback from the board in response to our concerns about students being able to get COVID was like, wow, okay, we can really be creative here. So that has helped. But yeah, I think whenever students come to us, we give them plenty of suggestions. So thank you for that. The last one, and I know I'm taking more time than I expected, I'm sorry for that, is the student engagement seal. So the third one, students, my idea was students would successfully, and I say mine, I've had lots of conversations with Mr. Zerilli and Mrs. Warner and Miss Merrill and some teachers. Students would successfully complete, as determined by the coach, advisor, and or the principal, 8 of the following extracurricular activities in any combination while enrolled in 9 through 12. And the student engagement is meant for extracurricular stuff. And so it would be 8 sports seasons, marching band season, high school musicals. So if you played 4 years across country, you did 2 musicals and 2 marching band seasons, you've done 8. You've been involved. It could be 4 football and 4 baseball. That's 8. That's a really engaged student, I think. And I think an easy thing to track. And notice it says successful completion. They will successfully complete. So if you do half a season, that's why it says as determined by the coach, advisor, and or me, to say, hey, you really didn't finish that season, that doesn't count. But again, if they all get the community service, the significance of these really, it's a seal on their diploma. So, questions about that?
I actually had a question. If you go back to the second choke competency.
Second, where are you?
2023.
2023, yes.
Okay, how does that impact, or does it impact our ability? Because at one time for big CCP classes, right, we had to screen the people.
Yep.
Okay, and this is kind of an edict. Are we still going to screen the people? Because remember, in the past we had parents complain, my child didn't pass. So if my child didn't pass the class, then they were responsible for paying for the class.
So it's funny.
Does this change our policy at all?
It doesn't. So it's funny that you hit on something that I had in my notes that I didn't mention. But the first is that they're really not our standards.
Okay.
So they are the college or the university that we partner with, and ODE's requirements. So we don't really screen. I mean, we help the facilitation of the screening, but at COTC comes in, and our students still have to qualify to take a CCP class. So they've got to take an entrance exam and pass COTC or OSU Newark's requirements to get into the program, and then they have to take it. So one of the interesting things is, though, if this is their pathway to graduation, they can't get the remediation-free score, they're not interested in enlisting in the military, and they're not going to CTEC to earn that credential, if that's their option and they fail that course, they're on the hook for the money. So they're kind of having to try this for graduation. If they get in and fail, then they're on the hook, which is a deterrent for some families, knowing that could be the case. But we would not be able to change any of the requirements for students to take CCP coursework. That's a great question.
It seems odd that this is in the pathways because of that, doesn't it? Or am I missing something?
I think that the rationale is to show that they're ready for college. Again, in some ways, I think there's a perception of lots of choice and lots of options, but for a student who is really going to struggle to get a 684 on the English 2 test, to think that they're going to qualify for CCP coursework and earn credit, it could happen, but it's not like a real, it has to be pretty unlikely. And I should say that a vast majority of our students will pass these 2 tests with passing scores, and they'll be on to graduation seals, and that's it. It's our 10 to 15% that we always deal with who are kind of on the bubble and at risk. That's where we'll have to really work here and do some strong remediation stuff for this testing and things like that. So that's where our energy will transition to. But yeah, good question. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. I apologize for taking longer than I expected, but thank you.
Good information.
No
Thank you,
problem.
Derek.
No, I appreciate
Thank
it,
you.
Derek.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
I like the proposals.
Okay.
They seem in line. I mean,
I think it's pretty reasonable, but I'm open to feedback. Thank you.
Just a couple quick issues here, just to alert the board of coming discussions, hopefully before, in preparation for the April 8th meeting. We have had quite a significant progression through our improvements in technology within the district, i.e. number of computers that we have within our district. Previous reports, put us at about 400 away from being one-to-one K through 12. We have quotes, Mrs. Seibel has secured them from Mobile Tech, and we have quotes for additional Chromebooks along with their license to get to the 400 figure that we need to round this off at one-to-one student ratios to start next school year. It's going to run about $105,900. That price is good to this month. We think there might be a slight increase in the licensing fee for a couple bucks, but that's going to be a pretty close figure to consider. So as we look to next year, some of the more major discussions we have to have: one, do we go ahead and buy, knowing the supply and demand chain that we've experienced this year? Do we go ahead and buy now? What funds shall we use? We do have some COVID care dollars coming. My understanding as of last week is we have more on the way. It might be smart use of our dollars rather than tacking the general fund, that we consider these dollars to help put a computer, for us to have the ability to put one computer in every child's hands. With that comes a decision as to how the board would like to handle that on an ongoing basis. Obviously, if you're dealing with 1,700 computers in a school district at various stages of life, we have a recycle plan we must respect. And therefore, most districts who are operating on a one-to-one do institute a class fee to help defray the costs relative to these. Most of them that we're seeing run about $40 per class. So each year, a parent would pay $40 for their children, K through 12, or any variation on that that the board may wish to consider. This helps defray the impact on the local taxpayer, and it seems to be the most common practice that we see to charge that. The life on these, correct me if I'm wrong, Debbie Seibel, I think the life on these are 5 to 6 years? 4 to 5 on the Chromebooks. Thank you. I think on our previous laptops, we were getting a little longer time on them. Okay. So 4 to 5 years we're replacing. So you figure over a 4-year period of time, you're collecting $120. You're making a dent in what it's going to cost us to keep up the refresh cycle. So between now and the April 8th meeting, I would really appreciate input from the board as we together try to decipher how we'll move forward. We certainly want to get ahead of any price increases. I had considered bringing the recommendation this evening, but as you know, I like to give you some time to consider these programs. It's a significant amount of dollars, so I'm going to go put that off to the April 8th meeting and have some discussion between now and then. So give me a call, drop me a note, let me know your thoughts. If we have our work session, maybe we can talk about that a little more. And I can send you a copy of the proposal, and I can send you a copy of a proposed fee plan. I know the board was gracious this year in eliminating classroom fees due to the COVID to help provide some relief. And from talking to parents, it is very, very much appreciated that you did that, and they are thankful.
Quick question, because I'm not super familiar with how other schools do that. Do we also have parents sign a contract that if it's completely broken, they replace it?
Mm-hmm.
I get the 40 per year, but what if it's completely broken? How does that work? Who is the liability on, us or parents?
There's a couple different ways you can do that. One is there is an agreement that every parent would sign for their child, accepting that they'd accept responsibility if, due to negligence, it was broken. There's also insurance plans that you can buy. What we're finding is the cost of the insurance plans probably doesn't warrant the purchase. We're probably better off to have our own insurance, if you will, which is what really that $40 will represent. Something's broke, we have a pool of money there that we can use for fixing these computers.
Are the computers?
The cost is too high on the insurance.
Are the computers turned in at the end of the school year? Every year they're brought back and then redistributed the next year, or does if I'm a freshman, do I get the same computer for 4 years, or do I turn that back in? How do we check the status of how
No, my understanding is that they would be turned in every year so they can be service
in?
updated.
I thought that was it, but
And
I
then
wanted to just
reissued.
clarify for those that are listening.
Right. I haven't been in discussions relative to whether the exact same computer goes back to the same student or not,
Sure.
but I'm sure we could discuss that. I'm not sure if that's wise or unwise. We'll have to look at that because the computers need to be kept fairly clean and make sure that the right things are put on them. So every year they would be reviewed
You'd
and
wipe them.
updated.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to present it tonight for thought. And
I have another
Alan?
question for you. Okay. So, when you have computers here at the school, we have security so that we limit access to different sites, right?
Mhm.
So how are we going to manage that when we send them home? So that'd be question number one. And then the other thing is, writing something is, I think from a memory standpoint, is more effective than typing something because you know what your hand is doing. And I could be wrong in my understanding, but I've read some articles. So that writing is a more effective learning tool than just typing, because in typing you don't know exactly what you're doing. But with writing something down, it's better for your memory to remember. So my question here is, if we go one-to-one, especially on the younger grades, I think older grades, it has less effect. But when you're younger, does that affect their ability to learn if we're always on the computer doing something versus the old way of writing something down? So those would be my two questions.
I think you'll find support for continuing to teaching the writing and trying to reinforce the writing, but also to put the computers in their hands because let's just face it, that's the world we're living in. And that's the better the children learn to use that technology at a younger age, the more advanced they can get in the area of innovation going through school, not only K through 12, but into college. With respect to your other question, Debbie, I'll defer to you.
Okay, so they can't remove it. All right.
So we have a filter called iBoss that we're on. We have problems with it today. We had our internet down with it. But we're looking at options on the filters as well. But those filters are placed on it, and they would not be able to access anything outside that filter without being super creative. Let's just put it that way.
Would we be in the future on a 4-year replacement plan then? So we're looking at purchasing 400 to 500 every year from then on, or?
A refresh will, yeah.
There will be some years where it's heavier than others, simply
When you
because of
purchase
when
the
we
initial,
place
when
the
you
orders for the
introduce
original
that
ones.
series.
And what would the annual cost of that estimate be?
I'd have to run those for you, Tim, off the
Okay.
top of my head. 400, you're looking at,
I mean, is that safe?
on
I
our
mean,
quote, let me just tell you,
1,600,
You
about
wouldn't be-
400 a year we'd be buying.
you're looking at,
Yeah.
right now, $237 for a Chromebook,
What was it? I'm sorry.
$237. And then you add the license, which is $237.75, actually, if you want to be exact. And then $27 for the license.
You're probably looking at 100,000 because you got 400
right.
this year, right? You got 1,700 total. You're going to have some damage. So
That's
probably around
it's about 120,000 a
yeah,
year.
100.
So
Alan, I
far,
want
we've been able to stay within our tech budget every year in our slow growth toward this. But COVID kind of ramped things up a little quicker for us.
Alan, I want to second your thought on the concern that if we are totally computer dependent rather than the student writing at some age levels, some schools aren't doing it for the reason you just stated, because the memory or the ability to learn it and embed it in our minds is not as great when we're typing as it is when we're writing it out. So I don't have an opinion on that. I think it's something we probably ought to look at, though. And how much are we doing it? Are we going to use it reasonably?
At the high school, I know that they did issue laptops, and my daughter is one of those recipients, and she still writes.
Still writes it
Still
out,
writes
and
the
then
notes.
Mhm.
And I wonder if maybe the high school teacher, maybe Mr. Husenberg could give us something during our work session to share how that's going in the classes, just in general, where they see that.
Sure. We've
So it
looked
would
at
give
it
the
on our
board some
side from
comfort.
the standpoint of how well the machines are being cared for and all of that for
Mhm.
repairs and all of that. They've been doing a really good job. In fact, I just heard even at the middle school, 2, Debbie, so far? We've had 2 repairs so far since we've issued. That's pretty good.
That's
remarkable.
exceptional.
Great.
If you remember
I think
last
that's
spring,
great.
we issued all
For
those
middle school?
computers and we only
Yeah,
had just a
that's-
couple.
I
That's
mean,
excellent.
last year we received all the computers back and they were also in good condition. So
Yeah.
I think that's,
So we can
A great
care for
thing.
them, but I certainly don't see this as replacing writing in any way. I do see it as improving their technology skills
Sure.
to keep up with what's happening in a growing number of school districts and getting our children to a level where they can be competitive in the marketplace.
I see you, Raquel. I'll give you 1 second. So on that, is that going to come out of the technology committee recommendation? Is that
Yeah, well, we've done a lot of good things, right? Debbie, we've made a lot of movements. You have to remember where we were years ago, where we had missing keys on computers, and we had computers that barely worked. Now, I'm not overstating anything, am I, Debbie? Okay, so we've come a long way due to the generosity of the school board, okay? And it is generosity, because these things cost a tremendous amount of money. So we will look at that.
Okay.
And we'll get you the numbers right there. Yeah.
Okay.
So don't be shocked.
We were pretty shocked when
Yeah.
we saw the first bills. We
Yeah, I
won't be as
know,
shocked
I
the
know.
second time.
And I'm telling you, generosity of the board.
But we
And it's
need to
been
do it.
past boards too, right? We've come a long way.
Sure
I'm
have.
telling you. Because we were scavenging computer parts, keys. You know, once you pop a key off, you can't replace it.
Right.
And what happened in earlier grades is the kids would just pick the keys off.
Yeah.
And then you're typing on something you don't even know what you're hitting.
What we're experiencing also, just as a comment, we're having a growing number of teachers who are requesting these computers for every child so they can be more effective in their lessons.
I just want to know the overall impact, especially at the lower grades, making sure that it makes sense for us.
Sure.
I don't think there's any major opposition to any of this. It's just getting the details. Raquel? That's great. Right.
That's good.
But our computers don't have that option. So,
That's real fancy.
yeah, that's the really expensive one.
That's the next
We
step.
go for the more economical
Streamlined.
Chromebooks. And the reason why we went to the Chromebooks was they were more economical
Yeah.
than anything else. They were, what, 100 and something less than other alternatives? Something
More than
like Was it? More than that, yeah.
Right.
It was,
About $300 difference. We
the
were paying
others were
$700.
really cost prohibitive. So that's why we went to the Chromebooks. It was, 2 or 3 years ago or something like that?
I have one more question about the computers. Are we going to require that all students get the ones provided by the school? I know how they are utilized will obviously probably be different in each building. I don't want to assume for the elementary, but I would think there's probably going to be less back and forth of bringing laptops to school, but I don't know. And so my thought is because I was preparing for the potential that, this year was going to be virtual. So I bought new Chromebooks for all 3 of my children. So I was just curious though, because thinking about the filters and what you say, the eye block, all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I already
Here's-
have really nice laptops for my children, are they going to not be able to bring them into the building because they're not going to have those filters and things like the ones
Yeah.
provided by the school? So just
The
for
issue-
those parents who already have kids with laptops, just thinking about that, how's that going to look?
Right. Certainly, the issue that you run into is what's on the computers
Sure.
when they come in
Yeah.
and not on the computers when they come in.
Yeah.
We can't really set up their computers.
Hmm.
And it's very hard to monitor what is on their computers coming into our buildings.
Right.
And getting them set up with to interact with our infrastructure becomes a challenge.
Yeah.
So it's not that we don't respect the parents that have
Sure.
computers
No,
in their
yeah.
kids' hands and
No, I
certainly
agree.
encourage that and to use that. But when it comes down to schoolwork, then school issue computers, I think you would find that most districts are requiring them to use the school
Right.
computer for those reasons.
Yeah.
It's security.
And we
Most
looked
of
at that years ago too, right? We looked at if my memory serves me right, Ruth Ann, we looked at people bringing in their own devices. And it became, and Debbie, I may be speaking incorrectly, but from my memory says we looked at this years ago. And to even maintain the equipment,
Right.
how do we make sure people are able to log on or do the tasks on their own equipment? And it became a nightmare to try to manage all these different devices.
Yeah.
So the reason why we went the way we did from a technology standpoint is we have a system now that's manageable. We know what we have. We know how to maintain the system and police the system, and that's what we thought had tremendous value to us as a school district. So,
Yeah, no, I agree. If they don't have the software, it's not updated, bringing their own stuff in. I just was asking because I'm sure there's lots of parents at home, especially in preparation for this year,
No doubt.
bought. Luckily, Chromebooks are affordable, and we
Yeah.
bought 3 of them. But just so that parents know that if we get to the point where we are one-to-one, using yours from home is not going to be, the way we go.
Is most of that app based and stuff though? So if my child uses it here, they can leave it here and just use our computer at home.
Most have the same.
I mean, it's all.
App. It's just a matter of now we're into the learning management system and what will they have on each computer to access appropriately the lessons from those teachers who are putting them on. If they didn't have the school issue, would their computer be set up? Debbie, I'm going to turn back to you. Is that a concern?
Okay. I was just thinking in my, you don't necessarily have to transport it back and forth if you're one of those households, maybe keeps your kid from having to bring it on the bus every day and taking the risk of damaging it if you don't have to.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, just wanted to get this out ahead of the action and get these questions. This has been good input. Thank you very much. We'll also let you know we are still continuing to work on our extended learning plan. One of the things I had suggested in the past month that we use some of the COVID dollars for is to provide extended learning opportunities for those students whom teachers and administrators identify as having gaps created by the COVID situation. And so we are continuing to work on that. We're working with the state template. The state, in the middle of our work on this, came out with a template. And so that's out there. I have proposals from each of the building. We discussed those at our last 18 meeting, and we're honing that to see, first of all, what are the number of students? Who are those students? Where do they live? Can we provide a meaningful minimum 3-week extended learning session or even more? We don't know yet with the dollars we have available. What staffing will be needed? We're trying to cost that out. There's been a request to consider offering transportation to some of the students. I'm not sure we're going to be able to cost out and do that, but we're going to look at the numbers there to see if that might happen. So I'm hopeful that we will be able to articulate that plan a little better to the board in the next month. We have been working on that for about a month and a half. And now it changed a little bit because the state came out with a template. And so I have to submit a plan to the state with what we're going to do. So,
How are we identifying the students and where they really are positioned? Are we going to do this state testing? Or are we going to do some internal testing that we say this would be where the student should be at the 4th grade level, or I'm picking a level? How are we going to identify what that student needs?
that is part of the criteria, is how we identify, and there's several points under there. We take a look at their progression on diagnostics throughout the year, like iReady, to see where they're at in language arts and math in particular is what we're going to hone in on. And then that'll be critical data. And then the teachers do these data maps to take a look at where the child is overall. If they were online, were they getting their work done? We get all that. There's like 4 or 5 different criteria that we're going to look at to identify who would be offered the opportunity to come to the extended learning.
Okay.
That'll all be in the plan, Ruth Ann. I have
Okay.
notes. I did not bring my notes
Oh,
on that
that's
here
okay.
tonight,
I
so I
just wondered
apologize
how we were
where I could
progressing.
articulate each of
Mhm.
those, but we are identifying that criteria so it's consistent. Okay? Those are the items that I have to discuss with you tonight.
We'll move into your recommendations.
Yes, under item 8, ask that you approve the open enrollment for 2021-22 school year as follows: to continue our current practice of no new open enrollment, grades K through 8, and to accept open enrollment applications for grades 9 through 12 in accordance with current policy. Again, this was put in years ago, this limit on open enrollment to help us control growth. And I believe we must still continue to do that. Under item B, to approve resolution to authorize the creation of Johnstown Joint Recreation District and authorize the superintendent to enter into an agreement with the Village of Johnstown, Ohio for the formation of the Johnstown Joint Recreation District. You had the original iteration, and with the brief or Friday's communication, I sent out the final copy. We did have that reviewed by our attorneys. We submitted suggestions to Mr. Leonard, had their attorneys review it. All the recommendations were accepted, and they are implemented in the final copies that we sent out to you most recently. And Mr. Leonard's here should you have any other questions during the discussion on that item. Item C, to approve request for reduction of fees for facility use for the Freedom Soccer Skill Training Program, March 12th, March 19th, 26th, and April 2nd at Group 2 rate of $200 an hour. I know there's been a lot of discussion on this. Our athletic director has provided answers, but she is also here this evening and can answer. There she is. Can answer any further questions that you might have when you get to that item. Those are my 3 general recommendations for you this evening.
Can I get a motion?
We want to separate out C
Got it.
for any reason?
Got
or
a
do you-
motion, then separate.
Yeah, we got a motion.
Got a motion, then separate.
Okay, I didn't hear you. Sorry.
Can we have a motion?
I make the motion. I'll second.
Do you want to just discuss C right now, or do you want to
That's
separate
fine.
it
I
out?
just wanted, that's the only one I needed more information on.
Madeline, is C, has that been revised, the dates or the request? This is getting moved down to the North Complex, Adams. Is that correct? Is that where they're going to? Oh, okay. Oh. All right.
So are we
We don't
not
need it at
needing
all.
this request at all at this point?
We're going to strike C entirely.
I think that's
Okay.
where it should be anyway.
So we're not setting fees,
I
we're
will
not doing
withdraw
anything.
my recommendation on that.
I heard a discussion, that's why I was asking.
Thank you. I wasn't aware. Sorry.
It was going on when I walked in.
Okay.
So we're
That
just-
happened, that moved quickly.
I would withdraw my recommendation C and offer you recommendation
A
to
and
approve A and B, please.
Sure.
You want to do another motion second?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion on A or B?
Do you want to invite the village to
Yeah.
give us any comments? and
Jim, do you or
cheers or
Chip, do you, either of you have any
excitement
comments or?
No, I don't have any comments as long as it gets approved. If it doesn't, then
And then he'll have
then we can
comments.
figure out something else later on. But no, I'm here to answer any questions. Do appreciate the school district's partnership as we try and find some more opportunities for recreation in our community. So I do appreciate the board's consideration and looking forward to getting this thing up and running. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we've had a lot of discussion about this between us, JYA, the village, the Miles Estate, and everybody else. 2 years of discussing this.
5.
5 since we started. 2 years of heavy discussion, I'd say.
That was in your court.
Yeah.
You were only 2.
Yeah. But I guess we'll take the vote, but this is a long time coming, and I think it's the direction we need to go in. So I do appreciate all the work that everybody's put into this. So with that,
But I also like to make sure that the public realizes that the school is not putting any funds into this program, that there's going to be a tremendous amount of heavy lifting that needs to happen for this to work, okay? Because you're starting with a base of zero, right? You know, the village is not putting any money in. We're not putting any money in. We're not putting any assets into this park district. So it's going to be up to the members of the park district to get funding, okay? And you don't have the Miles Estate on board. You don't have Northridge on board. So really the funding has to come from the members, from the community within our school district. And for us to be able to get the funding to make this all work is going to be a lot of heavy lifting, right?
Yeah, this is
And you
just the
said
first
for
step.
us. We shouldn't have anything to do with it.
Correct.
We don't. I want
And that's
everyone
my
to
problem.
realize
Well, you
that,
just said for us.
well, for us, for the school district, okay?
For the school district, shouldn't
It's
have
the,
anything
it's
to do
the,
with it.
no, it's the people that live within our school district.
No
that's gonna
financial
decide whether
commitment.
to fund
Right, but
this.
I
or
Only
not.
you're appointed, you have an appointing role and responsibility here to appoint members to it.
Maybe at the next meeting,
That's
we'll
it.
talk about how this is going to function. We select 2 people to sit on the board and they select 2, or should we do it?
Well, I mean, you can. It's in the legislation that we're passing tonight has that, where the 5 members of the board, well, it's in the bylaws that
Right.
will be approved, that once created. I mean, I mean, from our standpoint, I think the board for the public, essentially there's 5 board members that the village gets to appoint 2, the school district appoints 2. The 4 people that are then appointed to the board will agree on a 5th person, the majority vote to assign the 5th person. That way, the village and the school board are equally choosing and assigning those, so no one entity has control of a board. And then once created the board, that board acts on it, independent of the village and the school district. It's its own board. It has its own bylaws, the Ohio Revised Code, everything that they have to do, and they're responsible for all of their financials. They're responsible for everything that occurs, and there is no liability back to either the village or the school board for any of the decisions made by that district. They have to figure out how to make it viable. That's on that new board once created. So there is 0 financial input by the school district and 0 by the village once we create this. This just gives them the legal right to go out and begin the process. This is very much the beginning of any type of parks district for this area, outside of the village, you know, their parks area. But to have one in this school district, this is very much the beginning of it. And it'll take a while. I mean, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. This just gives them the authority to begin having meetings, setting up rules, searching out grants, you know, trying to identify properties, trying to identify a funding source. There's a lot that will go into this, and it'll take a lot of time. So
When I read on New Albany, they have New Albany Parks and Rec's website. I went out there and read about it, and they had a lot of influence from the school. They had an office in the school initially and things. These are things I would not like to see our school district enter into.
Yeah.
If we're going to be independent financially from it, then these are some of my concerns that I have, because I think the Johnstown School has a brand. Everybody looks to it, and they think that if the Johnstown School and the village of Johnstown enters into this Parks and Rec, that we're saying this is okay. So when, you know, they're out looking for funding, that this could also be misconstrued, that we're asking, that the Johnstown School Board is asking for funds as well. That's my reservation.
Good clarity.
yes, certainly.
Good
And
clarity.
I think everyone knows we don't have any space anyway. So
Well, I was just reading, I think they were there for, I forget, I shouldn't say, well,
Yeah.
but they were there for several years.
Right.
in the school.
all right. With that, any other comments or questions or concerns on A and B?
Nope.
Ms. Pulley, can you call the roll?
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
No,
Mr. Swager?
Yes. Motion carries. Mr. Dixon?
Yes, under personnel, I have a number of recommendations before you. Under item A, to approve unpaid leave for Shauna Kaufman for the listed period. To approve Autumn Pugh as a middle school math tutor. This is retroactive. Well, you know, we started her right away on an emergency basis for the 2020-21 school year. To approve 19.5 unpaid leave days for Debbie Hayes for the stated period. To accept the resignation, regretfully, of Tim Franks at the end of the school year, elementary fourth grade teacher. To authorize the superintendent under item E, and the treasurer to employ a facility manager and adopt related job description. I will note that we have gone through and removed some redundancy from the draft that was originally given you. And we did some final adjustments today with that. And we submit this as the current one, keeping in mind this still can be a fluid document and moving forward. We want to give you an updated copy for your review, and still would welcome any input from the board with any potential changes. And we can do that up and through the time of hiring. Under item F, to approve the volunteers as listed. Those are my personnel recommendations for this evening.
Can I get a motion?
I'll make
I'll second.
Discussion.
Yes, I'd like discussion on item B. I certainly hate to see Mr. Franks go. So
I say we
I'm
pull it
not
out
sure I
and say
want to
no.
take that I don't
Yeah.
think I want to accept his resignation.
I didn't want to put it on here either. He's been a
Yeah,
great teacher.
I was talking to Debbie before the meeting. So, he joined us in
Forever.
Zerfos when in the leakiest room that you can imagine, and he endured my oldest son in his first class, and he still stayed with us for 19 years. Okay, enduring
Remarkable.
my son in that classroom, because I remember going in parent-teacher conferences and seeing Mr. Franks, and I asked him, what were the trash cans doing on top of the desks? Oh, that's to catch the rainwater that's coming through the roof. And he has been with us for all these years and has done a fantastic job. So I'm sorry to see him leave.
Me too. Me too.
Certainly.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Certainly.
Agree.
I'd like to also draw the attention to E. Would you explain the process we're going to be using for I know we're going to authorize the superintendent treasurer to employ per the law. Got that. How are we going to make this process work? We're going to have interviews. We have a couple board members in the interview. Then we bring 3 candidates back to the board.
Well,
Is that what I understand? Just
We'll post a position like we do other positions out
Uh-huh.
there to get as many candidates as we can. We'll screen those candidates at the district office down to the top 3. Certainly, they'll be up for review. Anybody who wants to look at those, but we will select the top 3. We'll call the Buildings and Grounds Committee together to review the final 3, to sit in and observe the interviewing. Again, we've got to be real careful. Got to be real careful with interviews by the people who are then going to authorize the action to hire. So, but we'll work with that in the Buildings Grounds Committee to make sure there's ample input along the way for the final candidates, and then hopefully have a candidate for you as early as April 8th. If we can get suitable candidates in and ready by that
So
time.
we have an opportunity to at least look at the top 3 you choose in the board office. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
We had planned the Buildings and Ground Committee members. Ann?
Yes.
And for
Alan.
second.
Alan's back up in there. So, yeah, we would share.
Alan, I'm not
Share a
on
report to
policy.
them.
Could I take grounds and maintenance?
I'd rather be with Ann.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
Alan, I appreciate that vote of
Well,
confidence.
I write
the notes.
Policy. That's Amanda.
No, I'm not in policy.
Oh,
I'm
she
not
is.
any longer. So, okay.
Right, so
Any other questions, comments on those? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swanger?
Yes. Motion carries. Committee reports.
Well, policy, we didn't officially have a meeting, but in February, I had a meeting with Dale, Debbie, and then our representative from the OLA was able to sort of walk me through a little bit of the process of what he does when he's looking at policies, and I got to see the system they use, which is really cool for us on our end to see how we can make edits to policies and submit it to them online and approve back and forth. We didn't make any decisions on any policies, but I got some guidance on just a couple that are just need some tweaking to be updated, and then a few that'll need a little bit more consideration that will be getting out to us in the next couple weeks.
Just got to get
Nothing
back
to
to it,
present.
Amanda. I haven't had a chance to get to that project back since our meeting, but
Sure.
we've got the ones from fall and now.
Yep.
I'll get to those as soon as I possibly can.
And thanks for your work on doing that. Policies is, a very important job for the board, but it takes the right kind of person to be involved in that. And so we're very thankful from a technology and grounds maintenance person that you're
Well, I
working
wouldn't
on.
say I'm the right person. There weren't a lot of willing participants, but
Well, thank you so much for doing that,
We're pretty busy
Amanda.
on grounds and maintenance over here.
luckily my job just so happens to intertwine with it just
Yeah.
a little bit enough to have some opinions.
But thanks so much for doing that, because
Sure.
it is a thankless job.
Any other committee reports, updates?
Probably just a quick update on the weight room. We're still struggling a little bit, but I think we've hit a milestone this past week. Some of us met with the person who installed the flooring, came to an agreement on what items we would that must be completed before we accept the position or the job, and then we will give our second check minus 10% because the person does not have the product to finish the 100%. So, but it has a lot of moving parts, but the excitement is that we came to an agreement, and Debbie has submitted that to our installer, and he agreed, and so we're off and running on that. And so we'll be ready to use the weight room. We can use it now. In fact, we made that agreement, so it's ready to go. It's not, some of the decor is not in there yet, but it's certainly usable. Debbie, would you agree with that report?
We still have to bolt the equipment.
We have to
down.
bolt the equipment, but that should be,
That's our
that's
folks doing that.
eminent. Yeah, that's our,
Yes.
Will they get that done this week or? Okay.
I was looking at construction items, but you're right. They're going to bolt the equipment to the floor.
We thought that was key before we opened the meeting.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. For sure.
Helpful.
Especially if you're going to go in there and lift weights.
I know.
Yeah, okay.
Anything else on committees?
I have just on the grounds, I talked to Kim today and she set up a meeting for Wednesday at 11 to review RFPs that came back. Also, I don't know if we want to share, Kim, do you want to share from
That's fine.
Italia? Well, Kim's worked hard on getting that, so maybe she wants to say it. I don't want to take it away from her.
For our 2019-2020 school year, they did come today that we're going to get about $39,000 refund from them for missed services.
I want to thank you for pushing on that, both Dale and Pam, Debbie. That was a big push. It was very extensively pushed.
Represents about 1 month's total cost out of that year.
Do we have a date that the RFP will go out on the contract, on the procurement of a new contract? Or
The RFP's been out and back in, and we're
Yeah,
going to,
I was not aware of that.
That's what we're going to
Yeah,
review.
she
on
just-
Wednesday.
Got
we're
it.
going to meet to review the tab sheet.
Got it.
So they're in 8 companies total.
That's refreshing.
Yeah, but as you know, we have to vet very carefully where they're currently working, what's their current experience. We've learned through 2 companies now what we need to look at more carefully. And it's not always your lowest price, it's going to be your best company. So there's a lot of vetting to do between now and our meeting, and then certainly after our meeting as we hone this down to who we would like to recommend.
And make sure the public realizes that what we really wanted was for them to perform the services as contracted. And the reimbursement is for their failure to perform the services. So it's not that the school district is trying to save money by not having people maintain our facilities. It's just that they failed to live up to their obligation according to the contract. And that's the repercussion of doing that is the rebate that we're receiving.
Yeah, and two things. This represents the amount of shifts that they could ascertain that were not filled during that previous year. Number two, some of the delays were explained to me. This is a company that's owned by a company in France, and therefore that caused some of the delays. I know we were not understanding, hey, by the end of the fiscal year, certainly you ought to be able to get these figures from the previous year. But according to the American management side, it was the French who were the owners who were kind of holding up the process. And so it took some pushing, but at the end of the day, I think it's a fair settlement for what services we did not receive that year, Alan. So,
Did they
well said.
bid?
Sorry.
Did they bid? Oh. I thought maybe
On
you
that,
said-
when are the transportation bids due?
That was my question.
Oh. I know they're out.
End of this month.
Next week? Oh.
We gave them 30 days.
I thought it was mid-March.
Okay,
26th, I believe.
March 26th. Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you.
No, thank you. All right, anything else under committee reports? Anything under old business? Under new business, I have two items. The first is on our agenda here. It's to approve a 2-year contract for our treasurer for fiscal year 22 and 23. So I can
I'll make the motion.
motion. Second. Can you call the roll for that?
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
There was no discussion, Tim.
There was no discussion. You're correct.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
No, yeah,
Thanks so
thank you.
much. We appreciate you. helping
Uh,
us out.
The second thing, Dale, is when going through the committees, I did notice we were missing one that we've had. It's the community liaison one that Ruth Ann and I were on when we meet with the village. I didn't see that on our, if we can,
Well, that's not an administrative committee, so to speak. I mean, we can make it one.
okay.
But it.
I just want to
we
make sure if we bring
just
back
had
anything.
liaisons that would meet to that village committee.
I just want to make sure if we bring anything back, we're legally
Yes.
going through that process that we had last year. I just want to make sure we're aware, because when we have that meeting with them and discuss things, school flashers, crosswalks, whatever may get
Sure.
discussed, I want to make sure that if we bring anything back out of that, that Ruth Ann was the assigned person. I was the alternate on that.
You both
If
would
anyone
want to
has any-
continue in that role? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, is there any objections to us
I know that's
continuing
not
that role?
on the official committee list
Right.
or anything we've had approved. Let me look in to see if that's even necessary.
That's what I want to make sure that if we do have that, because we've
It
always,
could be just a thing. that
we
you
plan on
just-
continuing to meet, and we may bring something back, and I want to make sure if we do, we're
You
covered.
may want to
That
just
was
take a
smart to
vote,
think that.
just to appoint board liaisons
Okay.
to the village school liaison committee.
Would you look in
Liaison
that?
committee to the committee.
Right.
Let me look into it.
Yeah, just, I want to make sure we're covered, so
Yeah.
that if something comes out of that, we've got it
That's a
on the
strange
record.
one, Tim. That's really not, yeah.
But you're right, what's our obligation
Right.
with that?
Yeah, and does the recommendation have to come through you as?
Yeah.
that-
Yeah,
that whole-
let me research that one.
Okay.
I'd like to ask Alan how his liaison work with the legislature.
That's what she was asking
I
me about.
just asked him. I did tell him that he needs to start talking
That's
about
why
the
I was laughing,
graduation
Ruth Ann,
requirements.
so
Yeah.
I'm just.
I didn't
Sorry.
hear that over there. I was listening over here.
All right, at this time, yeah, Jim? Yeah, go ahead.
The village has submitted a Safe Routes to School design application. So if we are successful in securing those funds, that's purely just to hire a consultant, which actually will be through ODOT, to work with us and with you all, because we have to update the plan because of the new facilities, so we can get more money for infrastructure. So
You applied through the safety grant for that?
correct.
Okay.
Yep. So I just want to let you know, we have applied for those funds. Just dawned on me when you said flashers, Tim. So we got that application in. We should hear by the end of the month if we get those monies.
Is Michelle over that?
Michelle May.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
So call her, do what you got to do.
Yeah,
So hopefully we're successful in getting those funds, and then we'll kick off hopefully some conversation amongst the two organizations to get that updated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? At this time, can I get a motion to go into executive session for discussion of
So moved.
personnel and other legal matters?
We have a couple.
Second. I'll
All right.
second Kim.
At what time is it? Like
7:43.
7:43.
And
Mr.
you want,
No action expected afterwards.
who do you want in that meeting, Tim?
That'll be, well, we'll need Mr. Dixon, Ms. Byers, Ms. Seibel. Do we have anything for Kim? She needs to go on for
I don't think so.
I do need you for a conversation first, Kim. Chris. Yes, Chris still here?
She just,
She
yeah.
just went to the restroom.
Tell her she doesn't get out that easy.
Was she Janet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Benton? Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yep.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swanger?
Yes.